Welcome to another edition of the Power Connector podcast. I'm your host, Derek Dickow, where I sit and have conversations with people I respect, admire in business, and have what I like to refer to as curiosity conversations, understanding a little bit more about the person, the story of their business, and how they build relationships along the way that's helped them be in the position that they're in today. With me today is a friend, Saab Grewal from Singh Development. Saab is a principal of Singh, where they develop, manage, own, and help people find a home, right, in the communities that they serve in Michigan and in North Carolina. Additionally, maybe some other communities that we'll talk about. But Saab and I met several years ago and just admire the way that your family runs their operation and what you've built and what you're focused on for the future. But you're celebrating a big milestone for the company today, and that is 50 years. Congratulations on that to you and to your family. But if you want to, I'd love to start this conversation as I start all of my conversations with, tell me what's new and exciting.
Well, I appreciate you having me, Derek, and likewise. I think since the first time we met, it's been a great relationship, and appreciate what you do for the entire southeastern Michigan community and the development community in particular. So hats off to you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me here today. Like you said, our 50th year in operation and business, quite a milestone and something unique for us in that it kind of just comes, right? And like hits you right in the face in that we don't celebrate these things traditionally, right? And maybe it's just cultural not to like celebrate your wins. But from a company perspective and an operator perspective, really important to make sure that we get that message out, to show that we've been around, we've gone through bumps and bruises, not to say that we're not going to have any more going forward, but we have experience and we got a team that people want to be a part of. And so great for us, excited, all based upon relationships. If you ask my father, my uncles, my siblings, those that have been around the organization for a long time, it's built on relationships. Once we get through relationships, it's built on hard work. Once we get through hard work, it's built on making sure that we do the right thing. And a lot of times that's making the tough decision. So, getting that message out to folks in our community and our team is important for us this year.
Well, congratulations again. You've made a lot of tough decisions along the way. Projects change, interests change, but ultimately you're providing the most important thing that a consumer is looking for, which is a residence, place to live. Take us back and help me with the historical about the Singh company, the Singh brand name. 50 years been a long time. It's a great story of the American dream. And so start us at the beginning.
So companies started by my father and my uncles in 1973. They were young guys. My father was in undergrad at Wayne State University at the time. My three other uncles were all fighting in Vietnam. So weird time in life for them to experience. And I think at that moment, my father knew that he needed to create something that would help sustain an entire family, that they were in this thing together, that they needed to support their family here and abroad. And I think he had a passion for real estate really young. And so they became land developers. And fortuitous for them, right, is that they started buying land in the far-reaching suburbs at the time, which was like Novi and Rochester Hills, when the heavy growth areas at the time were Southfield and Livonia, some of those kind of now infill communities. But, one thing that's been important for them is that opportunity or change is always something that they gravitate towards. And so when they started off just being land developers, well, there's a point in time where there's a problem with land, right? The market has dipped, and so you're sitting on lots that you ordinarily would have sold to home builders that you no longer can sell to home builders. So they started a building operation themselves, right? And mainly to protect their interest in the land and be able to sell through, periods of downturns, right? And after going through some, ebbs and flows of the economy, they realized that they needed to diversify their business model even more. And they got into multifamily development. I think they built their first community in 1977 or 1978 in Novi as well. Again, 10 years ago was by, and they say that we need to diversify our economy even more. They're looking at data and demographics, and they started senior housing. And they built an independent living community at the corner of Walton and Adams in Rochester, across the street from Oakland University.
My alma mater.
Yeah. Wonderful place, wonderful area. Eventually added onto that community and created an additional level of care, assisted living. Seeing that that community, the people that moved into independent living, it was a difficult transition for them to move out of the building when they needed more care, right? But if you could add the care into the community that they were already in, that it reduced the stress, made sure that person felt better about themselves, their family was more comfortable, and all of a sudden they had a better healthcare outcome as a result. So, that business started back in 1987 now, right? And so a lot of years in senior housing as well. Continue to develop in southeastern Michigan, all throughout, in the suburbs primarily, Novi, Canton, Rochester, Sterling Heights, West Bloomfield. Back in the early 2000s, when the automotive industry started to feel some shakes and tremors, decision was made to expand outside the state just to continue to add some diversification, knowing that whatever we did outside the state would help the team and the communities inside the state, right? That if we had more diversification, that it would allow assets to be able to weather storms, right? And so when you saw a dip, that you didn't need to make some dramatic decision, that if there was a dip in occupancy or a dip in rents, that could you carry an asset for another year, another couple of years? And in turn, are you carrying the people with it, right? Are you doing right by the residents that live there? Are you doing right by the team that works there, right? As opposed to making these short-term decisions. And so, we started expanding outside the state in 2003, 2004. And now, it's amazing. It's been 20 years that we've been outside the state. We've set up an office in Raleigh, North Carolina, and from North Carolina, Raleigh, we've done deals in Charlotte, North Carolina, and up into suburban Washington, D.C., primarily Northern Virginia, and expanded the team. So, today, I would say that our employee base is almost 50-50 inside of Michigan and outside of Michigan. And there's some great things about that because, if you're in the bubble of any one of these markets and communities, the thought process is the bubble, market insight is that bubble, right? But the minute you're operating in a couple different markets, you have all these different people from different walks of life, it only makes your team better, right? Because these guys communicate with each other, they share resources, they're able to pick up the phone, talk to each other. And we try to, make sure that we create an environment that promotes that type of communication and collaboration. And then also, enjoying each other's successes, right? And so even though, there could be a downturn in one market, they can pick up the phone and call one of their peers or cohorts and congratulate them on a success in another market, right? And so sharing wins together. And so to date, we continue to expand our growth both in the state of Michigan, but outside the state as well.
How big is the company in terms of employees and people that are actually on the team in the different markets? So give me a snapshot for Michigan and for North Carolina.
I'd say that, we're probably, prior to the pandemic, we were probably a little over 2,000 employees. As there's been a little bit of a labor crunch over the last couple of years, we're probably a few people shy of 2,000 at the moment. Of that, let's say that 50 to 60% is in Michigan, another 30 to 40% is in North Carolina, about 10% in the state of Virginia.
And with a portfolio valued north of $1 billion, I don't even want to get into the number because it's priceless, right? At this point, you got 50 years into it. What has, for you and your team, been the secret to your success in terms of keeping people on your team for 25, 30 years? I mean, it's incredible for me to see that people can come to your company, to start as a young, somebody maybe out of college, maybe, 20 years old, but they're there 25, 30 years later, running a company at the scale that you have. What has been the secret to your success with keeping and retaining talent?
It's a core belief of ours to treat people well, right? My great-grandfather said, it doesn't cost you a nickel to be nice. And I think every member of my family has heard that statement or understands that statement. And so from a business operation perspective, right, like you can't treat your people like numbers. You got to be able to look past that. When somebody comes to work for you, it's not just a 9 to 5. Right? There can be certain jobs that maybe are 9 to 5, right? But like when people are looking for a career, you can't just turn off the rest of life. And so the way we see it is that if you're going to ride with people during the good times, you better also have their back during difficult times. And I think that's maybe one of the big keys to why we have a strong relationship with our team, is that whatever life throws at us, that will be a supporting block for them. Not that it always works. We do have a lot of people that celebrate, major milestones, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 25 years on an annual basis.
Yeah.
I think the focus is happiness, right? Is that, you got to make sure that your team is happy. Happiness is a very difficult and moving indicator, right? And so it's really just about pushing in that direction. Everybody can't be happy every day, right? But to know that you have this common goal of being happy or creating a happy environment is important to us. Go ahead.
Is that an edict from the top? Was your uncle, father, and uncles? Was that from your grandpa? Give me an idea for where that sort of mentality blossoms from, right? Because if I understand it correctly, your father, they were immigrants when they came over. They probably didn't have a ton of relationships or a ton of money to get started.
Of course.
So that was rule number one: always treat people good.
Always. I think it's probably a cultural thing, right? Probably goes back to faith. That we're all equal. We're all brothers and sisters, right? That lock arms, move forward together. It most likely carries generations, but I have a direct experience with my father and my uncles and that generation above me on their value system, right? And like all kind of close families, we meet and we dine together on a regular basis, and we share experiences and emotions together on a regular basis. That cultural stuff is built at the dinner table, right? It's built around the sofa, right? It's built on the back porch. And so that's the kind of philosophy that has been, embedded in us from necessarily day one. And it's easy, like I guess in a family business, right, that it's hard not to mix, your family values and your company values, right?
They become one and the same,
exactly,
right?
Yeah. Right? And everybody kind of picks that up. And so I think we try to treat the business a little bit like that, obviously with all the professional boxes that are necessary to be around it, but make sure that you have a free, open environment that allows people to grow, allows them to be seen, allows them to be heard, but, provides an environment that will push forward towards success.
There's so many companies just due to the change of market conditions, technology, opportunity. It's moving at such a fast pace these days. Companies are in and out of business in a year, 2 years, 5 years. Celebrating 50 years is a massive milestone. I think, if we look back maybe 100, 150 years ago, people just expect it to be with one company, whether it was a trade or a farmer or something. That was it. That's all they did. And here you have the ingenuity to continue to expand and to grow and to find opportunities. How does it work in a family business? Because sometimes, or help me understand how to make it work in a family business. Because sometimes, you have the first generation, they set the stage. This is what we're doing. This is how we're doing it. Sometimes the second generation isn't always in lockstep with that mentality. People have differing opinions. People have ideas, maybe the education, circle of friends, the whole thing, right? How is your family able to successfully navigate the waters of being a second generation firm, growing into another generation? And how are you able to do that?
Like any business, it's not easy, right? People are still people, even if they're your family or an employee or a team member, right? Dealing with people is always going to have some friction, right? And so it's the ability to work through those types of things, right? And success is easy to celebrate, right? It's when failure happens, how do you gather around that and make sure you push forward? I think for a family business to be successful in a next generation, whether it's second, third, fourth, right? There's got to be a passion for the business, right? That the business comes before everything else, right? The other is that I think from the founder's perspective, got to make sure that you bring in people to the family business that add value, right? Just because somebody's born with the same name or in the same family doesn't mean that they're necessarily the right fit for operating in a family business. And so I think when you got those couple things, right, that you have the potential to add value, right, and that you have a passion for the business, then you have the right kind of foundational blocks to continue to grow this, right? Now, again, like any business, it's going to have, like I can shoot out an idea and it could be swatted away like Dikembe Mutombo, right? But, you got to keep going at Dikembe Mutombo, right, in order to score a basket. But when you score that basket, then maybe you get the respect, right? He's still going to wave the finger at you, right? But like you got to get the respect to continue to move forward and continue to generate ideas and add value and participate in that growth.
Yeah, it's not an easy thing, right, to transition into the family business. And I think you make a great point. Just because you have the last name or just because you're related, there's still a lot of work to do, and people have to find their value system within the company.
Of course, right? And again, like the greater family is always going to be a resource, right? And so for us, we're lucky, right, that I got several talented family members all over the country, with such great backgrounds, and they're experts in their field, right? They're all resources, right? They're all people that are so capable, right? And so making sure you keep those bonds and those connections in place are key to building this stuff.
What are some of the secrets that or strategies that you implement to build relationships with people that are important to you?
Can't be afraid to meet, right? You got to be always meeting, reading, listening, right? Developing those connections. I think sometimes in a family business, and maybe it happens all over the place, is that, or a family business, like in my case, right, is that you come into the business, right? You have this kind of brand, right? And everybody expects you to know the answer, right? That, okay, he's that guy. He's part of that family. He sits in that seat. He's got this title. He must know the answer. I talk personally myself. I don't know all the answers, right? The key is, making sure your ears are open. Don't get caught up in the nonsense, right? That's just because somebody wants to call you a boss or a leader and all that kind of stuff. Don't get caught up in that. You don't have the answers to everything, right? We're always continuously learning. You got to meet, build relationships, learn from others. I always like it to think that just surround yourself with the smartest people. I'll be happy any day of the week to be the least capable person in the room, right?
Right.
And so, I just generally just having a genuine, respectful relationship with folks.
So are you consistently meeting with others outside of the organization to help tell your story, to help source talent? I mean, what are some of the ways that you go about that? I mean, I'm sure your calendar, if I looked at it, you probably got 10, 15 meetings a day, 15-minute phone calls, right? It's
I try not to have like those types of things. I think for me, it's really just sitting down and having coffee. I like coffee, right? And then so you just sit there and chew the fat, get to know somebody. And it could be somebody that you've known for several years, right? And you're comparing notes. It could be somebody that's trying to hustle you for some new business, right? But in that whole sales presentation, you get these data points or this notion that comes back to you and says, that's a great idea. Maybe we could adopt something like this and move forward, right? Or there's some common relationship, like, you know what, I'm not going to work for you today, but I know somebody that I think you would get along with really well. Can I put you guys together, right? And
so you as the leader of your company are doing that for other people, is helping to connect others and to try and add value that way?
Of course, right? I mean, I think you always be a resource.
I love that.
There's certain things you can be guarded in, right? But in our business, where we push a bunch of dirt around and then put some sticks on it and build it up, right? Like, you can't hide your business, right? I mean, like it's right there for the public to consume, right? And so, is there any secret sauce in the product? No, right? But it's the secret sauce is putting all the parts together and getting it done, right? And that's based on relationships.
Yeah. What's been for you one of the greatest challenges that you've had to overcome in your professional career?
Oh man, where does this stop? I almost look at it and I say that when there's one obstacle that you kind of overcome, the next one's just staring you right in the face.
You get done with one and another pops up, right? Right. And, I mean, that's the nature of being a leader.
Of course, right? And so it's when I came back into the family business, we were in the midst of the financial crisis of the late 2000s, right? And you get past that, and there was like a little bit of a runway of smoothness, right? And COVID hits you, and all the crazy things that are associated with COVID, right? And you got these rises in interest rates. I think though, like, all that stuff is very solvable. Anything that's kind of economic driven, it's just numbers, right? How can you plan for it? How can you business plan around it? How can you get everybody on the same page so that we're moving lockstep? I would say, though, the biggest the challenge, and we've been talking about it a lot today, right, is people, right, is that at some points you're going to have a diverging path with people, right? And it could be people that have been with you for a long time. And that's never an easy thing, and I'm almost like maybe it's like a divorce, which I've never experienced, but you got this very tight-knit relationship and experiences that you've gone through, and now it looks like it's going to end. How do you pull that stuff back? Is it worth pulling back together? Or is it for the best for everybody to go different ways, right? And as a young person in the business, you look at any type of failure that's staring you in the face, and you want to have a solution to it and fix it and make it right, just like it was before, right? And I think that's kind of a lesson you learn with failure as you grow up in a business and have to be a kind of a decision maker, is that sometimes the loss is the loss, right? That you have to look at it as a loss. You got to grow from it and look at that loss as value, right? And when I look at obstacles, I think that it's the negative ones that kind of help you push ahead and persevere in the future, right? And so, and for us, like, I guess that's been product-wise, it's been people-wise. You can probably, associate that experience with a lot of different problems.
Yeah, no, that's a big point. I appreciate you sharing that. I mean, it's not easy to walk away from a loss, appreciating it and the gift that it brings to you. But as a leader, I think the earlier you can recognize that, the stronger you become, and the quicker that next obstacle begins to minimize and minimize and minimize, and then you're onto the bigger stuff.
You got to keep a positive attitude, specifically when people are looking for you for direction, right? Like, you got to keep a positive attitude. I was listening to a little snippet from Arthur Brooks, who's a Harvard professor,
former AEI leader, yes, American Enterprise Institute.
Phenomenal individual,
amazing,
right?
Yeah.
And his focus, I mean, he's like a real life Ted Lasso.
Yeah.
Right? He's very positive and always kind of thinking in the direction of happiness. And I think, from a leader's perspective, right, like, you're going to have hard days, but, like, you can't show that all the time. I mean, your emotions are your tools. My father told me one time, right, like, when I was a kid, and, like any kid, you're learning how to deal with your emotions. And so, like, if there was maybe a period of time in my life that, like, I would get angry about something that was fairly insignificant. He pulled me aside one day. It probably was like 11, 12 years old. And he's like, hey, listen, all these emotions, they're all tools in your toolbox, right? If you overuse one of those tools, right, it's going to get weak and dull. And he's like, so even your anger can be a great tool sometimes, right? But if you use it too much, it has no value. And so I think, like, there's a balance out there, right? And so sometimes, you got to show a little bit of frustration for people to understand how significant the situation is, right? But for the most part, I think you got to be able to define a clear path, keep hopes up, right? And keep moving forward.
How were you able to achieve that, during the last couple of years? Been challenging. I mean, here in a situation where you have a lot of residents across the country relying on you, you want to keep them safe. I know we talked about that, especially coming out of COVID. But how do you display enough empathy to your team so that they can go about doing their business to ensure people feel safe and comfortable in a era where no one knows what's happening next?
I think, the pandemic was a scary time, right? And I don't think anybody could have predicted, anything that would have ensued from those early days of 2020, right? Saying that, like, you got this virus that's spreading in China, and it's come to Seattle, that it's going to spread like wildfire. We didn't know, and all of a sudden, it's all over the country, and you have fear, right? Even in places that it didn't exist, there was fear, right? And fear's that's a tough emotion to deal with, right? Because how do you make somebody less scared? It's not like you can just, like, it's like fear's like in a child where you just turn the lights on and everything's safe, right? Like, what are you going to do to make sure that you help everybody understand that despite everything that's going on, right, that we're going to make sure that we take the best steps forward to keep everyone safe and healthy moving forward. And, it brought a whole different list of challenges. I mean, we're real estate developers, and we're operators of senior housing and multifamily as well. But never in your mind do you think that now all of a sudden you're going to be the doomsday provider of care for this thousands of people. And so what are we going to do, right? So all of a sudden you're here, that you're like on a trading desk figuring out how you're going to buy masks, right? How are you going to buy cleaning solutions? How are you going to do all these things, right? And so that's where the relationships come into play, right? And so whereas somebody may have been a great relationship for something entirely different, they're resourced to align on N95s that nobody else has, right? And you're like, hey, look at us. This is what we need, right? And I mean, I remember early on when we were trying to gather masks, we sent out a message to, all our providers. I can't tell you how many of our guys came and dropped off their N95 masks, like our tradesmen, painters, and contractors that had a bunch of these things that were sitting around for their team to, help, keep their team safe in these construction environments. And they were like, you need these more than us. We're going to come drop them off. I mean, it was a wonderful scene, right? And the beautiful part of that pandemic was that all these people coming together.
Yeah.
Right. And trying to be Like all of a sudden, nothing else mattered. It's almost like a 9/11 moment, right? That everybody kind of had the singular purpose of making sure that we did the right thing and make sure we keep everybody safe.
Yeah, in times of tragedy, I think one of the greatest things about humanity,
Yeah.
right? Just in general, things happen. Look at all the people reacting. Look at all the people helping. Look at all the people willing to sacrifice. And your team was definitely one that was exceptional in that regard, that you were out to do whatever it took to protect your people.
Totally. I mean, we are nothing without the people that are on the ground, right? I mean, I think our team did such a phenomenal job. Not to say there were a few scared folks, right? And they needed to step aside. You let them step aside because, when you're on the front lines of something scary, you don't need somebody that's shaking in their boots, that's indecisive, right? And so, lucky for us, there were very few people that were involved, right? Most of our folks were just like, nope, we got to go do this.
We got to go do this. We got to get to the problem.
And it was our job to make sure that we gave them the tools and resources to do it.
The tool, so you took fear as a tool, and you were able to solve for it by taking action.
Mm-hmm.
Give me a sense for 50 years. You've been with the company, I believe 20.
Oh no,
less.
Yeah, I'm much less. I think
you were in New York for several years, and then you came back.
I'm 13.
13 in. Okay,
yeah, 13.
So in the last 13 years, do you have a favorite project that you say, Derek, this is the one that take a little extra look at this one because I had my hand on this one a little bit more. Do you have a favorite project in the portfolio?
No, I think for me,
very diplomatic of you.
Yeah, I mean, it's true though, right? Because each one of them is just and like in growing up in the business, right? That like even though like I may not have been, have any type of authoritative responsibility in any of these assets, like I was in some of these deals, like I was walking in those marshy waters with my father as a 7-8-year-old, and he was getting me to go out with him on Saturdays and Sundays because he promised me a Slurpee afterwards, right? And so, like, I have these kind of unique experiences with many of these assets that are important, right? I think I've told you this before, Derek, is that in a family business, tough, right? Because you get in there and you got all this accomplishment from my father and my uncles, right? Like, what's your role and what's your responsibility in that, right? And it's a tough thing. And very early on, I got some great advice, and I said that, hey man, and this is from my siblings that are in the business as well. They all know this. Is that if you guys do well, the world around you is going to say you were bound to do well. It was all given to you. Conversely, if you mess it all up and you guys do poorly, right? The world around you is going to say you were bound to do poorly. It was just handed to you, right? And so if you're out there looking for other people's approval in a family business, right, it's a tough water to navigate. But for us, I mean, I think there are more recent projects that myself and my siblings and even my father, my uncles have had, this kind of joint responsibility, and they've been fun because there's a bit more risk associated with it on a new development. Like there's a couple of them that we've done that maybe the older guys didn't necessarily agree with right off the bat, and they're like, I don't know if this is it, guys, and ultimately it turns into something that is pretty successful, and you get a pat on the back for a brief moment.
Very brief.
A very brief moment, right? And those are kind of fun because there's risk associated with it, right? And so kind of seeing that through and navigating those type of early projects for us was a good experience. Not to say that, that doesn't exist in other parts of the operation, but, if it's a 45-year-old asset that was, built by my father and uncles when they were in their 30s, right? They already set the expectations, right? And all those the fundamental factors of that project are already in place. It's just your job to manage it. And I think I've told you before, right? My job is not to figure out how to, start at home plate and get on first, right? That I was plopped right onto third base. My job is to make sure that we get runs, right? That I get home, and that we continue to add to the score.
Yeah, I love that analogy. Embracing where you are in your position, but also thinking, all right, how do we move the ball forward? Taking it from one analogy to another, right? Tell me, what does success look like for you over the next 24 months?
Success over the next 24 months is, navigating the current economic conditions, right? A lot of frothiness in the market. And so, you got asset values that are still really high. You got interest rates that continue to creep up. And, theoretically, it should push asset values down, but it hasn't. And then you have the replacement value, these construction costs, right, that are greater than the asset value. And so you have these kind of multifamily or these market fundamentals that don't necessarily align smoothly, right? And part of it is, pressure on wages, which I think is a good thing. And then, the cost of materials and goods and services and all that kind of stuff, right? So the market will continue to throw curveballs at you, right? And you got to be ready to catch them, right? Not necessarily hit them, right? I look at more from a catcher's perspective, right? Like, you got to be able to catch them, grab them in, throw them back. And so I think continuing to stay nimble. So success over the next 24 months is recognizing what's in front of us, continuing to stay nimble, and then doing what we've classically done, which is take advantage of the opportunities that are in front of you.
Yeah, there's always going to be market conditions, external rates, catastrophes, tragedy. There's always going to be something externally that's going to provide noise. In your three-pronged approach, I like that, is just be ready to catch the ball, and then get ready to throw it back when the time's right. Yeah. So it's also about patience.
Right? And I think maybe that comes with the that classic long-term look that we have, which is, take care of the people, take care of your customers, take care of the asset around you, right? And you'll be able to, withstand periods of difficulty, right? And so you got to be patient, ready.
So when we talk in 24 months, and we talk about, how have the home runs been, you'll share with me what?
I hope we'll have hit one, we'll have hit a couple home runs. It's hard. Like, even today, right? We're getting ready to start a deal in North Carolina, right? And it's expensive, right? And financing's tight. And it's scary because of the way everything's laid out today. But my guess is 24 months from now, we'll be so happy that we started, right? And that'll be our home run, is that, when things are still tough and you question whether you should, put your foot in or not, right? That we did, right?
You got started.
Yeah.
That's a big part of it.
That's it.
Let me ask, because, it's because of the challenges of the market, I'd love to get a little insight from you on how you cultivate relationships with bankers and people that can help pull the lever to ensure that your vision and your dreams also come true, because not everything always pencils out exactly. Things change, labor costs go up, talent, and just interest rates, right, as you mentioned. So how do you cultivate relationships with bankers that can play such a significant role in the vision that you create?
Lucky to have father and uncles that kind of set the stage in their relationships with some of the bigger banks, and the transition of some of those relationships to myself and my siblings. like just for that we were, just like we were putting on a tryout for my father and uncles on whether you were capable of being somebody that can contribute to a family business. I think you got to do the same for the relationships that were already built, right? And so I think a lot of those lending relationships, they recognize that they're in good hands. A lot of that comes with communication, right? Seeing results. Not to say that like it's not like that the person that you're dealing with at a conventional bank has the key to Scrooge McDuck's safe of gold coins, right? Like that person doesn't ultimately have the decision to give you everything you need, right? They got to take that idea and show it to their credit committee and to their board and say, hey, this is something that we think is going to be part of this risk profile or project profile that we want to be involved in. And a lot of that is just trust. Now, like when the market's hot, like and money's easy, right? Like, deals will happen that don't necessarily need to have all the boxes checked, right? Because, the market's hot. Money's got to go to work, right? But when market's tough, like we see today, right? Like you got a little bit of a credit crunch. It's going to be based more on the track record that you guys have shown and the relationships you've built.
And confidence in the brand.
Confidence in the brand.
Yeah.
Right? And so the brand, like I said, like when we come into the family business, right, the business means most. And really that's protecting that brand, right? Protecting that reputation.
I love that. Sometimes people that follow my work and follow our podcast here, they might be aspiring. They might be 20-something-year-old developer looking at their first site. They might be interested in building out a senior care facility. What advice would you have for them as they not on the economic side, removing the economic conditions and price of cost of money and all that, but in terms of going in all in after their dreams, what advice would you have for them?
Surround yourself with smart, capable people, and don't be scared to move forward.
I love that. Simple.
Yeah.
So the people you surround yourself with, and then go all in. Don't be scared about anything.
Yeah. I got my father's best friend was significantly older than him, almost like a father figure to him. Was in the development community as well. And, when I was a teenager, he's long since passed, but when I was a teenager, early in my college days, anytime I came home, he's like, we're going to have lunch. And I would sit down with him and we'd, just hang out for an hour, 2 hours, that type of thing. He told me a long time ago, I was probably 17, 18 years old, and he's like, if you don't throw the darts, you can't hit the bullseye.
Mm-hmm.
It's plain and simple.
Very simple.
Right.
Yeah, it goes back to that Wayne Gretzky quote, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Exactly.
Similar.
Exactly.
Yeah. You got to be willing to try.
That's it. Right. And I think if you go to a lot of entrepreneurs, and again, I'm in a completely different path, like that 25-year-old, 26-year-old that's trying to start his deal from scratch on his own, right, is in a completely different space than myself and my siblings are in. But, right, that you got to be able to move forward, and you got to go back to if it doesn't work out, there's a value add to you.
The lesson along the way. What was one of the best pieces of advice that you got from an outside mentor? So understand you have this amazing access to your family, the relationships, you're with them weekly, daily. That's great. But externally, you also, I know you cultivate relationships with people that can add some value to you, and maybe you can take them a challenge, or you could take them some problem that you might be working on. How have you, I guess it's a two-pronged question. How have you cultivated relationships with external mentors, and what's the greatest piece of advice that you've gotten from one over the years?
I think external mentors is a combination of folks that are, already have maybe a strong relationship with one of my fathers or uncles or siblings, right? And they understand kind of where we come from and what we do, but they kind of have an unbiased look, right? And so they always can be extremely helpful, right? Some of the other guys is just, people that I used to work for, right? Or a professor that I had, right? Those guys can be, a great mentor, or even like, some of your friends that are in different parts of the country, completely different industries, but have gone down this path of success and challenges, right? And they can also be a great resource, right? It's just continuing to keep those lines of communication open. But I'd say that the one that kind of comes back to me now, right, is that life will throw a lot of stuff at you, right? You get lost in it, right? He's like, don't forget who you are, where you came from, and the simple parts of your philosophy, right, and your family's philosophy. He said, always got to have that North Star, right? Don't get caught up in the nonsense and the noise.
It's great advice. Anything else? Give me some advice. Give me friendly advice as I look to build what I'm working on. Entrepreneur myself. I'm not in real estate or multifamily, but I'm in the people business, and I'm hungry to learn how I can develop relationships with people I care about and want to grow with. And maybe somebody can pick something up from this.
I think, Derek, when you and I sit down every so often, I always sit there. I always tell you, I was like, just an amazing connector of people. I ran into another guy that we both know very well last week. And he's like, I see that you're going to be with Derek for his podcast and his networking event that he's putting on. And he's like, so what's the value to you guys, this and that, right? And I was like, I don't know necessarily. Like, I can't sit there and quantify, like, if we do A, B, and C, right, that D will happen.
Right.
But I do know that if I call Derek and I say, Derek, I'm having this issue. I need to be able to talk to this person at so-and-so organization. Can you get me there?
Yeah.
And Derek will say, give me a couple hours.
Yeah.
I'll get back to you.
For sure.
Right. And I look at that relationship and I say that, that's, or the relationship that you've created with all these people around you. And I say, that's a wonderful talent.
Thank you.
And I guess relationships bring opportunity. And so, and I know that you're a great listener, but continue to keep those ears open, right?
Yeah.
Because that's where you see the pivots and whatnot. One of my favorite Derek experiences was I was at a networking thing with at a big insurance company, and they had their board there, and there was a significant university president that was walking on this tour of this building with us. And around the corner comes Derek and another guy in the industry, right, Joey, and walking down. And we see each other, we make eye contact. And here's this university president's like, oh my God, Derek, it's so good to see you. And I'm just looking at her and I'm like, my God. They're like hugging, like they haven't seen each other for years, right? Like that relationship and joy in seeing each other, right? And so I see what Derek does and the relationships he's able to create, and it's definitely something that I aspire to do.
I appreciate that.
And so a lot of value and a lot of skill that you have.
Thank you.
But I think it's all just very genuine.
Yeah.
And I think people see it. I see it, right?
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
To your point, I don't always know where these things go, right? It's like, when you look at in your business, there's a piece of land, there's a vision, there's an outcome that you're trying to produce, and there's, markers along the way to help you get there. I don't exactly have all the answers for where I'm going. I just know that the more I build relationships with people, the more I help them when they call, my life works. Everything works great. And I just think the sky's the limit with when you build relationships the right way. There's no telling what the outcomes could be. And I'm a firm believer that for any goal that we have, personally or professionally, we get there faster when we're building relationships authentically.
True. And I think you realize this, and the rest of the country and the globe may not understand it, right? But there is such an amazing group of talented people in this Metro Detroit area, right? Just extremely creative, hardworking, ingenuitive, right? I mean, just absolutely like top class folks. And I think the rest of the country doesn't know it or see it because, you know, maybe we get a little bit of a negative brand from certain places. But you have, like, you're building them up.
Yeah.
Right? You're creating this type of environment that's showcasing that talent, not only here, but to other folks as well that are in different parts of this country.
I appreciate that.
It's awesome.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, thank you for being here today.
Of course.
I appreciate the conversation, learning the Singh story. We'll have to do this again, especially in 24 months when you have your project that you're ready to talk about. But for now, you know, this for me has been amazing to understand what it takes to build a 50-year-old brand that has the trust and the confidence and respect of its peers, of its vendors, service providers, and most importantly, the families that you serve in these communities. What did I ask you the number of how many units you have? Do you guys share that? Is that cool?
Yeah, I mean, I think
it's on the website, right?
Yeah, I mean, all the stuff's there. You could count it if you wanted to.
Yeah.
You know,
give us a number. Give us an idea for the number if you're comfortable with it.
We're probably somewhere around 5,000 or 6,000 multifamily units and another about 5,000 senior housing units. Yeah. But, you know, 1,000 or so of each in our pipeline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not the number, it's the output. It's it's the delivery of service, class, respect. I think that you guys are so focused on that, and that comes out with the people that are around you and people that speak of you, which I think is priceless.
We could easily churn out more units, right? But again, there's only so much we can do at one moment, whether it's, you know, capital constraints or debt constraints or just general like overhead type of constraints, right? And so for us, it's really about, you know, making sure that we pick the right project that we know has some good legs to it, and it's going to serve that community well, that our team can absorb it and make sure that we can manage it properly, and that, again, that the end user, the customer, will have a good experience.
And do you and your siblings and the cousins, do you foresee this, hey, we're going to be around another 50 years? I mean, or is there a interest to exit, or this is a family business, we want to continue to go and grow?
I mean, we're always going to try.
Yeah.
Right. I think, you know, like as generations in 50 years, you know, I'm already an old man. And so like 50 years, hopefully I'm around. Right. And so, yeah, I tore my Achilles, man. I'm an old man.
Lean and mean.
But I think we're always going to strive for it. You know, the name of the family's on the business. Right. I think we see the value in that and the value to the community. And we'll keep it going for as long as the world wants us to keep going.
Yeah. What does that mean for you? I mean, so having the family name right on the top, what does that mean to you?
It means that that this is bigger than just you, right? That you represent a whole lot more than just yourself, right? That's that whole concept of, you know, for any business to be successful, you got to analyze the numbers and all those good things to make sure, is there a return? Is it going to be profitable? Is it sustainable for the future? But for us, is also, are we representing the name proudly? Are we representing it well? And so
that's everything.
That's everything.
It's all in the name. Saab, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for the conversation, the background, and just opening up your heart and sharing a little bit about the story.
Awesome. Appreciate you, Derek.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I hope you enjoyed this edition of the Power Connector podcast with Saab Grewal, principal at Singh Development, experts in multifamily, senior housing, but most importantly, putting people first as they build their brand and portfolio for the first 50 years on to the next 50 years. Appreciate you being here today, Saab, and I know we'll see each other very soon.
Appreciate you, Derek.
Thank you.